So one of the criticisms with regard to board games that involve dice is literally the random. The fact that you can put together a good strategy, you can make your way through the dungeon, you can set things up, and to find out what happens, you roll some dice, the lieutenant, the overlord, the boss monster rolls some dice, and this makes things, on the one hand, very, very filled with tension, right? Can you hit that dragon? Can you make it happen? Can you bring that dice together? But at the same time, you can have really, truly amazing tactics, played everything correctly. You didn't go after that treasure when you knew you shouldn't. You stuck to the mission. You leveled up. You chose the most optimal class attributes for the board game. And you roll some low dice and you just get totally obliterated. Especially a game, and you guys know I love Dark Souls. I do. I love Dark Souls. But part of the game is two and a half hours of leveling up, fighting through the minions to get to the boss fight. And the boss fights are epic. The AI is very, very interesting. There's a lot of choices in terms of tactical negotiation, but essentially you're rolling dice. You're rolling dice. And if you have one or two rounds of low damage output and the boss monster rolls legendary, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And you might get killed, and now you're like, wait, we spent 2 hours? That's the mini boss. Then you got to do the main boss. Then you got to do the mega boss on there. So I understand where this feeling is coming from. And we have something like Gloomhaven, which I love. Gloomy. It's right up there, one of my top 10 games. It involves cards. The cards interject some random, but you have a lot more control over it based on what you want to play on there. So with the dice, how do we control the dice? A game like Zombicide Black Plague. Love Zombicide Black Plague. Same thing. Got to roll the dice to hit. Zombies spawn. They're coming at you. You need to take these zombies out. My thought with dice games, if we just look at the mechanics, we need to influence the random. I will never be able to control it. I mean, I learned this from years of playing Talisman, and I love Talisman. But when I started playing with Jawa Balls, everyone was like, oh, the game's too random. There's no choices. The game's too random. You just roll and move. And time after time, Jawa won every single game. And the first couple of times I'm like, okay, it was luck. It's just Talisman, roll and move. But then I got really frustrated because I had some good gear. I had some good stuff. And Jawa just came out of nowhere and won time after time. We would play, after playing D&D for hours and hours, we would then play Talisman easily for like a year and a half. And yes, he'd lose once in a while. But I started to look and say, okay, let me strip away the visuals. What is he doing? And this is where I first was exposed to the idea, credit where credit's due, of controlling the random, influencing the dice. So my first question with regard to the dice, and of course this is going to be a little bit different depending on the mechanics, the DNA, exactly what type of board game you're playing. Is there some way I can get a reroll of the dice? Maybe through a fate point in Talisman, maybe through a lucky charm in Dark Souls, maybe through a one-time class ability with Descent, reroll something. Is there some way to unlock that I can get that reroll? That's the first way to control the random. Because often, okay, if I'm rolling, say, a D6, if it's a D6-based system, yeah, I'd love a 5 and 6, but if I got a 4, it's passable enough. Sometimes you're within that range, that 5 and 6, 33% band, where it's good. But you control the random by getting the reroll. The second way, whether it's gear, class abilities, potions, again, the mechanics, the exact mechanics you're going to have to plug in on how to get this. Can we start getting modifiers? +1 or +2. Dark Souls, we see this with some of the gear, where it'll be like, a yellow die plus an extra damage point. Or in Conan, we see that you roll 3 red dice plus something else on there. Conan, the board game. So can I get a +1? Can I get a +2? Zombicide Black Plague, as you level up, some of the heroes, some of the adventures, the characters, they'll give you a +1 to the roll. That's huge, because now that begins to shift your roll automatically in a direction, which again, if I need to roll a 4, 5, or 6 to have something happen, with the +1 it really means I have to roll a 3, 4, 5, and 6. And on a D6 that's only limited to that, doesn't have enough of a spread, +1 is huge. +1 is huge in a D6 based system. In a D20 system like Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, every little bit helps. Before you go into battle, cleric's going to be like, protection from evil, bless, cast you up, everything to get the party, that +1. The bard's going to be singing every song on there, +1 luck factor, all this, but it's still a D20. D6 system, D8 system, +1's big. So can I get that +1? The last piece is on the other side. When the dice go bad, can you mitigate it somehow? Do you have some way to ignore the results or absorb the results? We see this with an armor roll in Dark Souls, where you're going to block. The boss monster, the mega boss hits you with everything, and you're like, oh man, that's crazy. That's absolutely insane. Full dice, full spread, full hit, everything. I now get my armor save on there. So is there some way after the initial roll that you can block, you can recover, you can dodge? Again, the exact mechanics. But if you begin to look and make your decisions with gear and leveling up and the powers of the game to control these three factors, to influence these three factors of the random, all of a sudden it starts working for you. It starts absolutely working for you. And on a side note, we'll follow this up in the next podcast. If it's a competitive game, you control the random when it's your turn. This was the key strategy to Talisman. When it's your opponent's turn, how can you inject the random? How can you throw the random against them? An example with Talisman would be, they're moving their character and they have a way to influence their move to land on the space they want. And right when they get there, you hit them with the magic spell random card. Roll 1d6, crazy stuff's going to happen. Are there ways that you can throw and influence the random against them? But that warrants a lot more detail, and we're going to cover that, and we're going to explore that.